Hello, hello, everyone. How are you? This is Dionne Williams with the Emerge Fashion Show. I want to thank you for joining us for this edition of Emerge Design Talk. Today is a very special edition as it's the start of New York Fashion Week. Here in September in New York. I'm super excited about the interview, this special edition. We are back. New York is back to live shows as much as possible. And we are so excited that designers and creatives are able to showcase their collections and their talent during back to live runway during New York Fashion Week. This special edition of Emerge Design Talk, where we started it right at COVID lockdown, and we started interviewing legends in the fashion industry. Today is no different. I have been a fan of Patricia Field for many years. I'm so grateful to her and her team for taking out the time to talk to our audience of Emerge Design Talk, which is consists of, a lot of emerging designers and creatives. She is a legendary costume designer and stylist, and I'm going to put her on right now. Hold on. It's Pat Fields. How are you doing? Thank you so much. I am so excited. You look amazing.
It's a pleasure to be here. I've been watching your interviews and have really been enjoying them.
Oh my God.
That Cleveland one was a total winner.
That's so.
I love Pat. She's such a good, I love her. I love her walk. She created a certain style of a model walking, which I sorely miss these days because everything is so expressionless, and I like expression.
You love expression. Yeah. I want to get down to the interview because everybody, if you're in the fashion industry, you definitely know Patricia Field. But my audience, some people are not in the fashion industry. They're interested in knowing more, or they're younger emerging designers and creatives. So we got to know Pat Fields, who has paved the way. So you were born in New York.
Yes, I was born in Manhattan, in New York Hospital.
Oh my goodness. How was it growing up in New York in that time?
Well, New York at that time was fine for me because my mom had a dry cleaning business a couple of blocks away. And I would go from my school, which was across the street from our apartment, and go to my mom's before I would go to school, have a coffee and a roll, then go back to school. And I spent a lot of time with her in my youth.
Very nice. So they had a dry clean. Is that how you got into fashion? Like, how did you get interested, or did you always know? Because you're a creative, so you're born that way. So how did you start getting into fashion and the creative industry?
Well, I never really had a consciousness that I was a creative. I was just, a kid. But I do recall one of the highlights of my youth was my cowgirl outfit. I must have been about, I don't know, maybe 5. And I had aunties who were my mom's sisters. And, I put that on and I didn't want to take it off. It was like a vest, a fringe skirt, cowboy boots, a holster. And it's still, after all these years, it stays focused in my mind. So I think of it as maybe my first memorable to me fashion presentation.
Mm-hmm. So that's when you kind of figured out. When you start going into high school and all that, were you into magazines? Like, were you starting to get there, or that it didn't happen at that early?
And yeah, in high school, I liked my high school experience. Actually, 2 of my close friends were African American girls. And that was the most interesting to me up until that point of my schooling, because I considered them to be much more cultural than many of the other kids in school. Like Pat's mom had a radio show that she broadcast out of Harlem. My best memory, we would go there on Saturdays.
Yeah.
We would go uptown on Saturdays. And my best memory that I still hold dear to me, I can still see it, she had Billie Holiday as a guest.
Ooh.
And there we were in this radio broadcast room, a small little room because it was radio. And there was Billie, and we were sitting on the floor. And she went up to the mic and she sang live. And that's one of the highlights of my youth. I loved it because I was a big jazz fan in those days and still am.
Yeah.
But jazz has taken a turn, but especially female vocalists, I love them. Chris Connor, Julie London, of course, Billie Holiday, Dinah Washington. I grew up with those women. And, so what a thrill it was for me to be there in this little room with Billie Holiday sitting at her feet, and she's singing in the mic on the radio.
Oh my gosh, I know that had to be incredible.
It was incredible.
So I know music is a big art, music, fashion is a big piece of who you are. How was it coming up with fashion and music, art in the 70s and 80s when it was the Club Kids and all the Studio 54? Like, how was that era during that time for you?
Yes, I always think in terms of history as one of the components of how I view things.
Yeah.
I enjoy history, ancient history, all kinds of history. And growing up at that time, the 80s, Studio 54, so on, how could I say it? The energy and the spirit was so there.
Yeah.
It was not blasé by any means. And I'm so glad I have that in my memory as, a real experience for me during those days. We would go, I'd be hanging out with Halston and Andy, it was, you would go in there and immediately start dancing.
Yeah.
There was no lounging about. Another great place was the Paradise Garage.
Yeah.
After hours. And you would get out in the morning on a Sunday morning and the sun was out. And, they started at 4 a.m. And, it was a different spirit. People were, I feel as though I can only speak for myself, but it was happier.
Yeah.
It was happier.
Yeah.
And I derived, a lot of my experiences from those happy days.
And how did your career start? Can you tell us how your career started in style, as costume design and styling?
Well, okay, my career started in the late 80s. Candy Price, who was at that time a major player in Vogue magazine and a friend of mine.
Okay.
And she took on this movie about a window dresser, but it wasn't as much of the plot wasn't as much fashion as it was a psychodrama. And anyway, Candy recommended me to the Karen Arthur, to the director, and that was my first experience. We shot it in Pittsburgh, and that was my very first experience. I owe my career to Candy Pratt for sure, for exposing me.
Oh.
And then I went out to Las Vegas and I did a Michael Mann TV series, which I enjoyed, called Crime Story. And, it just went on. And I met Sarah Jessica, and we did a movie, a film in Miami, called Miami Rhapsody. And that's when I first met Sarah Jessica. And then a small time later on, Sex and the City started up, and Sarah Jessica introduced me to Darren Star.
And that's
the rest is history.
Oh my gosh. So tell me, what's your process when working on a project? We have a lot of stylists. Everybody wants to be a stylist. Everybody works, that's like a great field to be in. What's your process when you're working on a project? How do you start creating, or when you start the whole process of what the vision is?
Well, that's a very good question. I personally, my style, I think of it as happy clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I love the optimism that I can express in fashion. And I'm like getting back to history, the 1930s movies with all the glamour.
Yeah.
Yes, the Depression was on, but when you were watching a film, it was all glamour. And that made a big impression on me.
Oh, yeah.
And it always stayed with me. And so, of course, as time went on and I developed my career, I just mixed my appreciation for the glamour and introduced a little bit of happy optimism into my style, because that's what made me happy and that's what made me excited and creative. And so I just followed what felt good.
So the process also, when you is it like you plan out what designers or what looks like? Do you contact the designers? Like how is all that happen? How does all that happen?
Yes, well, of course, the beginning of Sex and the City, Sex and the City had to earn its way in.
Yeah.
And after a short time, it did.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was a little more difficult, but we got over it, and everybody was happy. And me, number one. I know Darren was happy, and it just worked into one of those great situations. And I always credit Sarah Jessica for bringing me to Darren. And since then, Darren and I have had an ongoing relationship. I've done many projects with him, as well as this latest one, Emily in Paris.
Which is my favorite, one of my new favorites. So I heard that Sarah Jessica Parker, she worked when you're working on a project like Sex and the City, are they working with you? How do you develop the different personalities for each of the characters?
Well, in the beginning, I said to Darren, give me a description as you see these four girls.
Okay.
So I had something to sink my teeth into. And that helped me a lot. But I really have to say that working with Sarah Jessica professionally, she loves fashion. So, it was just a match made in heaven. We really did appreciate each other on that project.
Yeah.
I respected her taste. She respected mine. It was just a match made in heaven, let me say. And of course, the rest of the cast was great. I mean, Kim Cattrall. I mean, she was so funny and so inspiring. So, I'm so happy that I can sit here and say that I've done this.
Yes. And the movies. Now, you won't be on the reboot, but you did 2 of the Sex and the City movies.
Yes, I did. And I know that the second movie, people seem to like the first movie better. But when I read the script to the second movie, I was so inspired because I come from a background of Greek and Armenian, Middle Eastern kind of feeling. And I was like gung-ho, ready to go and work these girls on the desert.
Yeah. So how big is your team when you're working with that many clothes and that many scenes? How big is your team during that?
Well, the team has different components. There's a creative component, which includes an assistant designer, or even 2 assistant designers. But then there's also a very important part of the team, which they call in the industry the technical part.
Okay.
But those are the ones who keep everything organized for all of the different actors and their roles. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I bet.
that's basically how the team breaks down.
Yeah, that's so the iconic movie, The Devil Wears Prada, which is one of my favorite. What was your approach to when you started that movie with my favorite actress, Meryl Streep? What was your approach to when you started that movie and the fashion aesthetic?
Well, we do share a favorite actress, which is Meryl Streep.
Yes.
And I was very lucky in that to also have Stanley Tucci. I mean, the cast was great. The director I had worked with, David Frankel, I had worked with on several projects prior, and that's when I met Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had just a great cast, and it was really funny. David Frankel would come into the office with his book, and he'll say, I'm writing a new scene, a montage. Meryl walks in and starts throwing her coats.
Good reviews, my friend. You know it's delivered today. Where is everyone? Why is no one supposed to walk outside?
Coats down. Or, you know, Annie Hathaway comes out of the subway and walks through the traffic, and each time she walks behind something, it's a coat change. And I was like, oh, this is wonderful for a small budget movie, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that green coat that she wore, Annie. And I understand recently that she has it and she loves it as well.
Oh my God. So just like that with those montages, when Meryl is throwing down her coat and purse, or the Anne Hathaway scenes, how do you come up? Do you have to talk to the designer, or you already have all that you have there beforehand? How do you handle?
Well, number one, when the montages come up all of a sudden that were not originally in the script, I'm like, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So I had to really reach out to my friends in the industry to help me there.
Yeah.
Because this movie, while I think people really liked it, when it started out, it wasn't this big budget movie.
Okay.
And of course, when David told me Meryl Streep, I'm like, fabulous. Because I really respect her and admire her.
Yeah.
And the chance to work with her, I was so happy.
Yeah.
And she pulled through.
Yeah, and I read somewhere when you're starting off, like they mentioned, like they said, Meryl will have her hair was white. Like, do you start with storytelling, and that's how you come up with how the looks or how that person?
Yeah, like the producers didn't understand. This was Meryl's idea with her permanent hair person, and we sat down and met for the first time, and they told me Meryl's hair is gonna be white. And I was like, great, because white against anything is going to look fabulous. Of course, it was styled chicly. It wasn't just white hair. But the producers, that's not their department, let's say. And when they heard about the white hair, they became alarmed. And, and I said to David, please talk to them. But in the end, I had to tell Meryl, Meryl, you have to go tell the producers you're doing white hair. I love it. I want it. But they're only going to listen to you. Sure enough, she did it. And sure enough, and her hair was great. It was a fashion look.
Yes.
It was so hard for me to describe it to the producers, because immediately white hair, old lady.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was a little struggle in the beginning, but it was fine. Once Meryl read the riot act, it was over.
What's some of your favorite looks in The Devil Wears Prada?
Well, I love that look with Annie Hathaway when she goes into the closet with Stanley Tucci.
Yeah.
She goes in like a plain girl, a plain. And she comes out in this whole Chanel getup.
Love it.
But what I loved about it the most was that look on Annie's face that she was like, "Oh, I've arrived." She
Right.
was like happy, and that really, her expression really made it.
Yeah.
Those were great, but that satisfaction on her face was like perfect.
Iconic.
Yes.
So now you're working on the second season of Emily in Paris, which
I
is one of
just
my
finished the second season. Yes.
yeah, which is one of my new favorite shows. I loved it when it was out. And how was working with Emily in Paris, and that's a new generation of artists, and you know, a new generation of audience and knowing about your work. What was your approach when you started that show?
You know, I took all my inspiration from Lily Collins, which is really, it's really the best thing to do is to reach into the actor, because the actor is on camera. And, you know, Lily, I found out at the very beginning, like the amount of followers that she has. She's major.
Yeah.
And she's a very professional young lady. And working with her, it was great. It's working with a professional. Even she's young and so on, but she's got experience and she's optimistic, and it was wonderful to work with her, actually.
Yeah.
She enjoyed the clothes, and she gave me a lot of inspiration for her wardrobe because of her attitude and her age. She was young, but she was smart.
Yeah.
And it was extremely inspiring to work with her.
When we're watching shows, you know, when your audience is watching shows like Emily in Paris and The Devil Wears Prada, Sex in the City, I mean, most of the time we're watching for the fashion. It's, you know, it's a great plot too, but that fashion is like another character. So do you think about that? Like, I know people come up to you all the time. How do you feel about your work making such a big impact on why people watch the show?
I tell you honestly, Dionne, I am a little bit scared of it because I just do my work and I see what it is and I judge it in my own way. But all of that recognition,
Yeah.
sometimes it makes me a little bit,
Yeah, a little.
you know what I mean? I'm a little bit more into what I do than, you know, taking bows or something like that. I'm like, I enjoy it. It's fun. It's creative. I'm very lucky to be having found making a living in fashion and TV and film. I mean, it's wonderful, really. It's fantastic.
When I was researching you in my show, Emerge Fashion Show, which happens during New York Fashion Week, where we showcase emerging designers, you support emerging designers and artists. I was watching one video of you just really supporting and knowing about the work, and you were featuring them as well. Why is that so important to you?
Well, you know, all during my life, when I started out with my own shop, way when I was in my early 20s after working a couple of years for retail companies. And it just came naturally, I must say.
Yeah.
You know, someone would come into my shop looking for a job, and, you know, if they looked interesting, they caught my eye, and I said, okay, you're hired. You know what I mean? Because if you're in fashion, you have to feel fashion.
Yes.
And so when you present yourself in interesting and original ways, to me, that's a very important, you know, my eyes are open to that. I don't really ask them, what's your age or what's this? I just, you know, I see them, I see how they present themselves, and I go from there.
And what advice do you have? Because we have a lot of designers and creatives and stylists. What advice do you give those up and coming stylists about, just making it in the industry?
Well, as far as advice is concerned, I really just feel that I advise by example.
Yeah.
A lot of the film designers, a good handful, let me say, are kids that work in my store.
Mm.
Colognedo des Empire.
Oh yeah.
There are many. Molly Rogers is now doing the
And Just Like That.
And Just Like That.
Yeah.
Come back. And there are a good 7 or 8 more. Eric Damon does Gossip Girls. I have with me when I'm doing Run the World, which is current, Tracy Cox, who is also. I pulled them out of my store because I have experience with them. They're creative. I could see their creativity and their interests.
Yeah.
And so they catch my eye.
Yeah.
And so I have like a little bit of a graduate school of costume designers going on, I realize. And I'm very, very happy for that.
Do you tell them to always keep learning? Always keep, how did, to kind of make it in this industry, which could be tough?
I never really felt that it was tough.
Okay.
It could be, but I never really felt it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just doing what my eyes and my heart told me to do. And my main thing was just, if it looked good to me, I would present it to the actor and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But, it worked out and I'm happy. I mean, there have been actors who sometimes people say are difficult. I mean, I love Chris North and we hit it off from the very beginning, Mr. Big.
Yes.
And I said to him one day at a party, it was so smooth with us. It was love at first sight. And I was so happy that you felt that way about me. And I was curious as to why, because not that I'm calling that you don't care for women,
Mm-hmm.
but, and he said to me, I really laughed. You're not a woman. You're one of the guys. I said, okay, now I understand.
Oh my
I'm
God.
happy to understand that because I loved working with him and he liked working with me as well. So,
yeah. So what's next for Miss Field? What's next? What's on the horizon? I know you used to have your iconic store, your infamous store.
Yes. Well, I sold my store. I had luckily bought the real estate at the right time and I was in a position to sell it when I felt it was time.
Yeah.
But at that point I was like questioning, okay, I'm definitely busy in the films, but I'm kind of known for my own thing, independent thing. And so I decided to keep in touch with all the creatives and open up what I called an art fashion gallery, which we're sitting in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, just as a transition for me, I was busy with film, but I didn't want to leave, the world of, I don't want to call it retail, but people coming in and, that interaction.
Yeah.
So we're here sitting in my gallery right now. And I think inadvertently, art fashion, I created some kind of a trend because I see all these big designers and small designers painting on clothes.
Yep.
In my gallery, and this has been going on, the art fashion, about 4 years, 5 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, I'm happy to see that people are inspired by it because it's direct from the artist or the designer because we also represent one-of-a-kind designers, David Dalrymple, you know, many other designers. Odo Octavio, for example, who is an excellent designer.
Yeah.
Sex Fifth Avenue, SEES, who makes really gorgeous pieces. So, you know, it keeps me stimulated and creative, so to speak,
Right.
in the circle that I feel most comfortable in.
So, because I was on your website, patriciafield.com, and you can purchase outfits, clothes, all kind of stuff. I love it. One of a kind. You can't find. I mean, like, this is the spot to be.
It is one of a kind, I'm happy to say. And, you know, for the most part, it's affordable. It's not like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've, through the years that we've been doing this, we've been building up a wonderful clientele that come into the gallery, but as well, of course, online, where we started online. Because when we started, there was no gallery physical place. And I said, let's just do it online and see where we go. And then we opened the gallery, and it's been, you know, happy for me, happy.
So people could come there because, you know, I'm in New York for Fashion Week, and I definitely have that on my schedule. If it's something that people could come to the gallery.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because I really enjoy welcoming people into the gallery. And of course, because we started online, maybe our online, you know, people got used to that. But I love when people come into the gallery, and they come from all over. We had a friend from Miami the other day, and this client Willem, who is like a TV, what do you want to call it, drag queen type?
Yeah.
And you know, there's something here for everyone. It's not just one thing, because we represent, I don't know, I would say maybe 15 design artists,
Okay.
painters. And so, you know, it's a mix. It's not just one look. And I kind of do give them the freedom to do what they want to do, because I'm not, you know, that's not my position. And for Fashion Week, and this is like the second or third time that we're doing a virtual presentation.
Oh, very nice.
For Fashion Week.
Okay.
And I'm excited about it, because having a gallery is wonderful, but at the same time, you want to send out the message to as many people as you can.
Yes.
You know, I love it when people come into the gallery. Please come in.
I'm definitely coming in this week. I really thank you so much. Everybody should go to patriciafield.com. I just love your career, and plus you support emerging designers, plus you support Black designers and creatives. I want to thank you and your team. You were on, I really tried to get with you earlier last year, but you were on set, but your team continued to work with me. So I know you're like very true and real, and I really want to thank you for that.
You're very welcome, but let me just say in closing, I am very partial to Black women because I feel they care for themselves. They're grooming. They remind me of my aunties when I was little, who had come from Greece, and they were in their like late teenage, early 20s, that I was a kid, and we used to go shopping. And I just respect people who care about themselves.
Yeah.
And that's why I love this show, Run the World.
Oh, that's right. So
when Bowser called me for it, I said, yes, I'm there.
Oh my gosh. She is the costume designer stylist for the new hit series Run the World, which is based on some professional women in Harlem. just, I love that show. When I found out, I was like, oh, this fashion is really stepped up. And then I found out that you were the stylist. How did you, right quick, get to, or Yvette Browser called you?
She called me about it, and of course, I was delighted. And just because of my respect for the way, in my lifetime, I respect the Black women because they respect themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not just throw some T-shirt on and some sneakers or something.
Right.
They care about the way they look.
Yeah.
And that was very, very attractive to me.
Yes.
And so I jumped at the opportunity. I mean, you know, I grew up in New York, let's face it. I'm not like, you know, from whatever. I won't mention any names.
Right.
New York's my home.
Yes. So I know you
grew up with all the girls.
Yes. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate everybody also tuning in, speaking with Ms. Patricia Fields, Emerge Design Talk, this special New York Fashion Week edition. Don't hang up, Pat. I'm just going to close out. Thank you guys. You can make sure to catch all the Emerge Design Talk on the Emerge Fashion Show YouTube channel. Thank you.